Today, we're looking at a conflict that's really shaped the Middle East for, what, over 40 years now?
That's right. It's often called a war that does not speak its name.
A deep ideological fight, isn't it? Iran on one side, the U.S. and Israel on the other.
Exactly. And it's not just about governments and strategy. It stirs up incredibly strong feelings, resentment, passion, even hatred.
And understanding its roots seems crucial, especially when you hear talk today about the potential for barbaric violence, as some sources put it.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to pull back the layers, look past the sort of, fixed positions and slogans,
Try and find some elusive truths, maybe.
hopefully. And we have to start back really on February 1st, 1979. That's the day Ayatollah Khomeini flew back into Tehran.
A massive turning point.
Huge. It just shattered old alliances, created new ones, and completely redrew a map of the Middle East.
It's funny you mention alliances because looking back, it's almost hard to believe now that Iran, under the Shah for nearly 40 years, was actually a key ally for both the U.S. and Israel, a pro-Western monarch.
Yeah, it seems incredible today, doesn't it? But from the U.S. point of view, especially during the Cold War,
Right.
Iran was absolutely vital, the cornerstone of its influence, some called it. A key battleground against the Soviets.
So lots of military cooperation.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
All designed to keep Tehran firmly in the Western camp. And the Shah himself, well, he felt he needed American backing.
To counter the USSR, obviously, but also...
So just to keep his own government secure. He felt vulnerable.
And what about Israel? For them, isolated in the Arab world.
Well, Iran, or Persia, was seen as a lifeline almost.
Yeah.
They started reaching out back in the 50s.
Because it was pro-Western, but also, crucially, not Arab. A different kind of Islam.
Exactly. A natural ally, they thought. It became arguably their most important partner after the United States.
Really? That's significant.
Oh, yes. Big economic ties, grand projects, very close collaboration, even involving the most advanced technology at the time.
So, on paper, this looks like a rock-solid partnership.
It did.
But underneath, things were clearly falling apart. By early 1978, you had huge protests.
Hundreds of thousands of Iranians in the streets. Yeah, they were just fed up.
Fed up with the Shah trying to force this Western-style modernity.
That, and also a system seen as deeply unfair, corrupt, not meeting basic needs.
And because the U.S. and Israel backed the Shah so strongly,
They got lumped in. They came to embody the imperialism that the demonstrators were condemning. Supporting the regime meant you were part of the problem.
that anger, that resentment, it must have been building for a while.
It was simmering. And then came September 8th, 1978, Black Friday,
Yes, a terrible day.
a real turning point. The Shah's army fired on protesters in Tehran. The official count was 87 dead.
But the opposition said far more, didn't they?
Much more. Estimates went as high as 4,000. Just showed everyone the monarchy's true face, as one source puts it. After that, the revolution felt unstoppable.
And suddenly, Americans and Israelis in Iran, the expatriates, they became targets.
Directly. You saw attacks on Western symbols, cafes, banks, cinemas, restaurants, anything seen as representing the Shah's backers.
So the revolutionary goals all kind of merged together.
Exactly. It became down with the monarchy, break ties with Washington, break ties with Tel Aviv, and reject this whole Western model.
And into this charged atmosphere steps Ayatollah Khomeini. He'd been in exile for 15 years.
Right. But he'd always been this powerful symbol of opposition.
What's fascinating is how he united such different groups, though. Not just Islamists, but nationalists, even Marxists. How did he manage that?
He just embodied that resistance for so many. His vision was clear. An Islamic republic, a theocracy, ultimately.
With the clergy, the religious authority holding the ultimate power, the supreme leader.
Precisely. And when he returned, February 1st, 1979, the scenes were just unbelievable.
10 million people on the streets of Tehran, wasn't it?
An estimated 10 million. It was called the biggest welcoming ceremony ever. People saw him as this, charismatic leader, a man of God.
Someone who could rescue the country, bring about a kind of paradise.
That was the hope for many, yes. A paradise on the earth.
And the Shah, he was already gone by then.
He'd left 3 weeks earlier. He was ill. The writing was on the wall.
And then just 10 days after Khomeini's return, it all collapses.
Just 48 hours of actual fighting, really. And the monarchy, after 37 years under this Shah, was just gone, swept away.
Total victory for the revolutionaries. So what happened immediately to those identified enemies? Israel, for instance.
Well, they moved fast. The Israeli diplomatic mission in Tehran was sacked, completely devastated.
And the staff.
There were 33 left,
Yeah.
the last Israelis. They had this incredibly tense 17-kilometer journey to the airport.
Through streets packed with millions of revolutionaries.
Exactly. But amazingly, they got through unharmed. Apparently, people thought their bus was a revolutionary bus. Just sheer chance, really.
Wow, and while they're escaping, someone else is arriving.
Yes, Israel's archenemy, Yasser Arafat, the PLO leader,
He flies into Tehran.
and gets welcomed like a head of state. There was a huge symbolic moment. It changed completely the whole strategic policy in this area.
Khomeini sending a message to the whole Muslim world.
A very powerful message. From now on, Iran backs the Palestinian cause
And then he makes it even clearer. He takes the former Israeli diplomatic building.
and gives it to the PLO. Creates a Palestinian embassy right there.
Talk about a statement.
Absolutely. Severing all links with Israel, a state he believed had no legitimacy. Any idea of an Israel-Iran alliance, definitely a thing of the past.
Okay, so Israel is out. What about the U.S.? Washington recognized the new Islamic Republic initially, right?
They did, yes. But you can imagine the concern growing in Washington.
And then, November 4th, 1979, the U.S. Embassy.
Hundreds of Islamist students storm the embassy. They take 52 American diplomats hostage.
And Khomeini's reaction.
Initially, he seemed hesitant, but pretty quickly he backed the students. It became known as Act Two of the Revolution.
And this wasn't just a diplomatic crisis, was it? It became something more.
Oh, much more. It became one of the founding myths of the new regime. It cemented that anti-Western identity.
And absolutely poisoned U.S.-Iranian relations for, well, forever, basically.
It's widely seen as the main reason for the breakdown, that image of the hostages.
How long did it last?
444 days, an incredibly long time. When they were finally freed, it was clear a new Middle East was taking shape.
And Tehran's path was set on a collision course with Washington and Tel Aviv.
Definitely. Nothing would ever be the same again.
That collision course then shifts dramatically to Lebanon just a few years later in 1982. Why Lebanon? What was happening there?
Well, Lebanon was already a mess, torn apart by civil war for years. It had become this regional battleground.
There were players involved.
Syria occupied part of it, but down in the south, the PLO was basically running the show.
Using it as a base for attacks against Israel.
Exactly. Launching deadly raids, as the sources describe them. It was a tinderbox.
And Israel decides to act. June 6th, 1982, Operation Peace for Galilee.
Right. Led by Ariel Sharon, who was defense minister then.
And the stated goal was?
To take control of southern Lebanon. Stop those PLO guerrilla attacks by Arafat's fighters, the Fedayeen.
But they went further, didn't they? It was a massive invasion force.
Huge. Nearly 90,000 soldiers, 1,300 tanks, 1,500 personnel carriers. And yes, Sharon pushed way beyond the initial objectives. They advanced rapidly towards Beirut.
Now, for Khomeini back in Iran, seeing Israel invade another Muslim country, that must have been intolerable.
Unthinkable, as our sources say. But Iran had a massive problem.
A war with Iraq.
Exactly. Saddam Hussein had attacked him 2 years earlier, in 1980. That war dragged on for 8 long years.
So the Islamic Republic was fighting for its life.
It couldn't possibly open another front against Israel. So Khomeini had to justify not intervening directly.
And he used that famous phrase.
The road to which is Jerusalem goes through Karbala. Karbala being the hugely important Shia holy city.
So a religious framing.
But also a deeply strategic decision.
Yeah.
It meant we have to deal with Iraq first.
Yeah.
First things first. Survival comes first.
So Iran's hands are tied. Israel besieges West Beirut, where Arafat and his fighters are trapped.
Heavy shelling. Parts of the city destroyed. Thousands killed, mostly civilians. It was brutal.
And eventually Arafat is defeated, August 21st, 1982.
The siege ends. Arafat leaves Lebanon, goes into exile in Tunisia with about 10,000 fighters.
And a multinational force comes in, mostly Americans and French.
Yes, tasked with keeping the peace in Beirut.
So for Sharon and the Israeli Prime Minister, Menachem Begin, they must have thought, job done. The Palestinian issue is settled.
That seems to have been the thinking. And they had this secret objective, too.
Which was?
To try and turn Lebanon into a Christian state, led by the Maronite minority, make it a strong Israeli ally.
But that plan completely backfired, didn't it? It woke up a sleeping giant.
It really did. They completely overlooked, or maybe underestimated, Lebanon's largest community, the Shiites.
Who lived mostly in the south and east?
Right, where the invasion and occupation were happening, they suffered directly.
While the PLO is being dismantled, the Shiites were feeling the heat from the Israelis.
Exactly. And for some of them, this was the moment they decided, okay, we have to fight back. We need to resist.
And this is where Khomeini's influence finds a new channel, right? This time, directly fostering resistance in Lebanon.
Yes. You had figures like Naim Qasim, he was a young chemistry teacher then, involved in Islamist education groups.
And he saw Israel as the enemy, supported the Palestinians.
And crucially, he said that Imam Khomeini's thinking chimed perfectly with their own beliefs.
So these Lebanese Shiite groups started to coalesce.
They did. They got together, came to an agreement, and actually went to Iran.
To pledge allegiance.
To pledge allegiance directly to Khomeini, and he gave them his blessing.
Why was Khomeini so receptive? Did he have connections there already?
Oh, yes. Old and deep ties, apparently. Many leaders of the Iranian Revolution actually had a background in Lebanon before '79. They knew the Shia community well.
So this alliance forms, and in the summer of '82, they meet in Baalbek, in Lebanon.
To set up a new organization specifically to fight Israel, with Khomeini's backing.
Initially called the Islamic Resistance in Lebanon.
That's right. It only officially became Hezbollah 3 years later, in 1985.
And its goal was pretty straightforward at first.
Very clear. Armed resistance and the Israeli occupation drive them out of Lebanon by any means necessary.
So you have this new group. How did Iran provide concrete support?
They sent a few hundred Revolutionary Guards, the Pestarin, to the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon that summer of '82.
These are elite troops, reporting directly to Khomeini.
Yes. They didn't do the fighting themselves, but they provided the crucial stuff. Weapons, money, training, know-how.
And getting them into the Bekaa Valley required help from someone else, didn't it?
It did. It brought Syria into the picture. Hafiz al-Assad, the Syrian dictator then.
Another enemy of Israel.
A fervent one. His army already had a presence in Lebanon, so he facilitated the Iranian presence in the Bekaa.
So Khomeini wasn't just creating a proxy militia?
No, he was building a long-term strategic alliance. The partnership with Syria would last for decades.
And it gave Iran reach, didn't it? Strategic depth, as analysts call it.
Exactly. Tools to threaten Israel and, by extension, threaten the United States.
Yeah.
A way to say, if you hit us, we can hit you back.
So creating Hezbollah allowed them to hit both Israel and the U.S. right there in Lebanon.
That's how it played out.
So what we're seeing take root here in the Bekaa Valley is this whole system of alliances. Iran, Syria, and this new group, Hezbollah.
A system that would later become the powerful Iran-Syria-Hezbollah axis. Though, at the time,
Nobody really saw it coming. The Americans, the Israelis.
least of all them, it seems, they were focused on the PLO. They didn't grasp the significance of this new Shiite force emerging.
And this new force introduced a terrifying new tactic, these acts of martyrdom, suicide bombings.
Yes, the first major one was November 11th, 1982.
Tell us about that.
An 18-year-old Hezbollah fighter, Ahmed Kassir, described as quiet, but someone who couldn't stand injustice.
What did he do?
Around 6:30 a.m., he drove a white Peugeot packed with explosives into Tyre in southern Lebanon. At 7 a.m., he crashed it straight into the Israeli military headquarters for the entire region.
A big complex.
A 7-story building.
Yeah.
Just demolished instantly.
And Kassir became a shot, a martyr.
Yes. It was seen as this incredibly bold act, both religious and political. Nothing like it had happened in Lebanon before.
The casualties were horrific.
Carnage. 91 Israeli soldiers killed, plus 15 Lebanese prisoners who were held there.
And Ariel Sharon, back in Israel, he was baffled.
Completely mystified, according to sources. They thought they'd crush the militants by kicking out the PLO.
And Israeli intelligence just didn't have a handle on the Shiites in Lebanon.
Almost no solid research on them at all, apparently. They were caught completely off guard.
And the multinational force in Beirut, the Americans and French, they were equally unaware.
Just as unaware. But their turn was coming.
October 23rd, 1983, the Beirut barracks bombings.
A devastating day. A truck bomb, maybe 2 tons of explosives, hit the U.S. Marine barracks.
While they were sleeping.
Many were. The 4-story building just collapsed. 241 Americans were killed.
And almost simultaneously,
Another suicide bomber hit the French barracks. 58 French paratroopers killed.
these double strikes? Who claimed them?
A group called Islamic Jihad. But it was widely believed then and now to be basically a cover name for Hezbollah, acting with Iranian backing.
So after these attacks, Hezbollah couldn't be ignored anymore.
Absolutely not. It became undeniable there was this pipeline.
Weapons, money, fighters coming from Iran.
Hostages sometimes going from Lebanon to Iran. Political support. The links were clear.
But Hezbollah wasn't just a military force, was it? You mentioned they built something else alongside it.
Yes, and this was incredibly smart strategically. The Iranians involved understood early on You can't sustain an armed group without popular support.
So they built what's called a counter-society.
Exactly. Parallel institutions alongside the Lebanese state. It's a cradle-to-grave system, almost.
How does that work?
The source describes it vividly. The child is born, he goes to a Hezbollah daycare, then he goes to a Hezbollah school, then he joins the Hezbollah scouts, after that he attends a Hezbollah high school, and then he joins Hezbollah.
So schools, clinics, social services, embedding themselves deep within the community.
Making them indispensable to a large part of the population, building loyalty and resilience. It's not just a militia, it's a whole social and political movement.
And this combination, the military pressure, the social embedding it, proved incredibly effective against Israel and Lebanon.
It did. The Israelis faced mounting losses. Over 600 soldiers killed in just 2 years. They were losing control.
And eventually they pulled out June 6, 1985.
3 years to the day after the invasion started, they withdrew from most of Lebanon.
Though they kept a security zone in the south for much longer.
Yes, about 10% of Lebanese territory. They held on to that until the year 2000.
But that 1985 withdrawal, Israel saw it as a humiliating defeat.
A major blow to their prestige and their strategy. They went in to crush the PLO and remake Lebanon. They ended up forced out by this new Shiite force.
But for Hezbollah,
It marked a first victory, a huge boost to their legitimacy and reputation.
and they chose that moment, didn't they, to officially claim that first big attack.
Yes, they finally claimed responsibility for the Tyre headquarters bombing from 1982 and revealed Ahmed Khazir's name.
And November 11th, the date of his attack.
Became Hezbollah's official Martyrs' Day, cementing that narrative of successful resistance.
So by the time Ayatollah Khomeini died in June 1989,
The Shiite theocracy he founded 10 years earlier was firmly established in Iran.
and the fight he started against Israel and the United States, amplified by Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Had fundamentally, profoundly changed the entire landscape of the Middle East.
And that really brings us to the end of this particular deep dive. We've traced those threads back from today's tensions.
Right back to the Iranian Revolution, the surprising alliances before it, the radical changes in '79.
And then the birth of Hezbollah, out of the conflict in Lebanon.
Events that didn't just happen in isolation. They created ripple effects, set dynamics in motion that are still playing out powerfully today.
It's an incredible story of how ideology, revolution, and strategic calculation completely reshaped a region. A new reality forged in fire, really.
And Khomeini left behind this potent legacy, which leaves us with a crucial question looking forward from his death in '89.
What would his successors do with that legacy? How would they carry that fight forward?
Exactly. And the answers to that question are still shaping conflict and politics across the Middle East and indeed the world right now.